Hey y'all, I'm James Wright and welcome to Wood by Wright 2. Today we are going to be making this 15-piece burr. I like making puzzles like this and it's a very fun one. I do also have directions to the plans. I've found them on several sites online, but I'll leave a link to the ones where I downloaded these if you want to see that down below. But for right now we're going to be making this. It is out of 4 different pieces of wood. We have Aspin, we have mahogany or a Filipino mahogany, we have poplar, and then we have red oak. So a little bit of everything in here to provide a little bit of color and have a good bit of time. Now this is something, if you have a table saw, it would be really, really fast to make, but today we're going to make it with just hand tools. So let's dive in and take a look at this. I'm going to use some scrap wood, and this is all 3/4 inch stock milled S4S. And so I have 4 different lumbers that I'm going to use for this. Figured I'd play with 4 different colors, and it's a good chance to experiment and try different woods and get to know how they feel and how they work. So the first thing I want to do is cut a bunch of these to the length I want. I'm actually going to make them a little longer because I'm actually going to cut them down to their exact length a little later. I just want to make sure I get a decent square end on one. And then I want to cut them all into strips the same width as they are thickness. So in this case, they're going to be 3/4 inch by 3/4 inch and full length all the way around. And I'm going to do a strip off of either side of the board so I can get 2 strips out of it. Well, most of these I'm going to need to make 4 strips out in order to make enough pieces. So I can cut it down and then we can smooth them out. And so it's going to be a lot of repetition because there are 15 pieces in this. And all 15 pieces are going to need notches and cuts and all be around the same shape and size. So once I can smooth off the marks, I want to make sure that they are all the same thickness. So I picked one particular stick and made that my thickness stick. And every piece I planed, I put up against that and just made sure it felt right. Because every now and then with marking gauges or going past the marking gauge or something of that nature, you don't get quite exactly what you're looking for. But if you feel it up against a specific known thickness every time, then you will get what you're looking for. So after I've ripped 2 strips off of all of these, then I need to go back through and rip some more strips off of all of them. It's going to be the exact same process. Make sure that they are square, do the marking gauge line, then cut them down, and then plane them smooth. And then after planing them, I'm just going to make sure that all of the surfaces are indeed 90 degrees to all sides. I don't want to be messing with any trapezoids. And so you can just see I'm going to feel them together, make sure it's the right thickness, and then plane it down. And before actually marking them with the marking gauge, I am going to square up the edge to make sure that that is true and right. And then we can go back through and you can see this is going to be a lot of repetition. And this is one of the things that make it a good skill building project because you are going to be doing a lot of repetition. And if you don't get it right for the first time, well, then you can work on that and get it right the second time. And you can keep going back to it. Especially with different woods, then you get to experiment with different woods and see how they react differently from each other. And there we've got all of our pieces ready to go. Happiness! Now I need to cut them to length, and they are all measured by how many pieces they are apart. So the long ones are 7 pieces long. So if they are 7 3/4 long, so I can set up however many pieces they need to be, set them on there and make my mark, and then I can transfer that line around the board. And that way I know that they are precisely what they need to be, even if I ended up planing my boards slightly wrong. Now I know that the length will be exact because I'm using it against reality, not against some measurement in a diagram. And it helps if you use a square on it to set them all right to the right length, and then you can put the boards on top and make your mark. Transfer it around, and then cut them all down. And yay, we've got all of our boards cut to length. Now we need to start doing all the joinery on this, and there's going to be a lot of little notches that need to be cut out. And usually the easiest way is to mark them all out. And so I have a marking gauge that runs a line halfway down the board. Now, because I even know it's halfway down the board, I'm still going to be marking it from one face of the board. That way I don't get anything that might be slightly off if the boards aren't perfectly square. At either end, I'm going to cut them down to that halfway line and then come with a chisel and start chopping it out. And I'm going to come in and chop out about halfway, and then about halfway farther, and then about halfway farther until I get close to the line, and then I can come in and pare it out and get a little bit of detail in here. Now I'm not taking my time perfectly. I don't need these to be perfectly smooth. It's a game, it's a toy. It doesn't have to be absolutely perfect in every way. So this is a time where you can play a little bit. As long as the outside edges are good, that's all you really need. And so we're going to cut down to the lines, chop out, and do it all over again. Second verse, same as the first, and third verse, and fourth verse, and up to the 15th verse. And then with each of these that I cut a notch into, I also need to cut a notch in the middle. So again, you can see I'm putting the sticks up against it and then laying out where reality is, not where the tape measure says I need to make it. And then we need to cut a little notch out of the middle of all 3 of these. And some of them are different. You have to be very careful because there are 2 of these that are the same and there's one that's slightly different. So you just need to make sure that you actually can see that, and that when it comes time to actually put it together, you have the right piece there. Otherwise, for some reason, this puzzle just isn't working because one piece is wrong. And then with this little notch, it's the exact same thing. Chop down on either side and then clean it out. Now on some of these, if I put a piece in there and come to find out it doesn't fit down in there, I need it to be a little wider. And rather than cutting a saw, it's easier to bring the file in and widen it out until the piece fits in and you get a nice clean fit. Then for these half ones, then rather than using a full piece, I'm going to use one piece that I've already chopped out. You can see here I'm going to chop down about halfway and then go down a little farther, chop down about halfway and then go down a little farther until it gets all the way in there. For most of these little pieces, there actually ends up just being a simple slot that gets cut out of the middle, so it looks like they're 3 blocks long, and so the middle block gets taken out. And it's going to be the exact same process we did before, just in a slightly smaller format. And yet again, you can see why this is actually a good beginner project, because you're going to be doing the same step over and over, and it's a good way to learn it. And if you do mess up on any particular piece, then oh well, you can make another one, and no piece is unique and special, and they can all be switched out and you can check with others. And if something breaks, then not a problem. There are other boards that you can then turn into this piece, and it's then another chance to learn. So dive in, don't be afraid to make mistakes, and have fun. This is a great way to work it, because you're learning to work with a saw, you're learning to work with a chisel, you're learning to measure against reality rather than just what the documents say you need to cut it at, and you can keep going. Now on this last little piece here, this needs to be turned into a round dowel because it needs to rotate. So I'm going to cut it into a square, as you see here, and then I'm going to notch in each of the corners with the saw. And what this will allow me to do is basically turn it into an octagon. And then after an octagon, we can turn it into a 16agon? Something like that. So you can see you can just come in with the chisel and do the exact same thing we did before. We're not going to do anything particularly special. It's just rather than cutting it square to the sides, we're going to cut it at a 45 to the sides, which isn't that much different because it's a hand tool. And with a hand tool, you don't need to set up a gauge or set anything particular. The only hard one is the one here in the middle. And as long as you can get tight up to the corners, then you can come in from the side just like you would before. And there you've got your octagon, and then you can come in with a file and round off those corners until you get a nice round dowel in the middle. And this will allow it to pivot inside that slot. A relatively simple, easy process, only takes a couple minutes, and you've got something that looks really interesting and something that would be very hard to make on a power tool. Now we can go for the testing, and most of the first testing is just fitting and fiddling with it. And you're going to find that some part is tight and really hard to jam in there. And in some cases you like them to be good and tight so they don't fall apart. And in some places they're just too tight and you need to file them down. So at this point you can check a piece. If it fits nicely, great. If the next piece doesn't fit nicely, then you can file it down to make sure that it fits. Make sure you have a nice smooth fit in between each one. And then in most of these you need to make sure that they can fit in multiple places, not just any one place, because they can be switched out and moved around. And most of these you can see they're just going to pop into place like this, and I like to have that little bit of friction fit so it doesn't fall apart on you. There's nothing worse than picking up a puzzle and the whole thing just falls apart. And then as you can see, check it, file it, work on it, and it goes pretty quickly and pretty easily. And this is a lot of fun, because as long as you take your time with the file and you do some detail work, it all comes together. And it's amazing when it actually comes together, because you've taken your time and you're doing this little bit by little bit, so there isn't any massive jump, there isn't anything that just falls apart on you. Until all the pieces slide in, and then this last one, that dowel, will then rotate and lock everything in place. And voila, we've got ourselves a puzzle. Happiness. Now we just need to do the finishing touches on it, because everything is just square and it needs finish. So we're going to break it all apart and then start chamfering all of the corners down. As well as anything that was still tight in the last test, we can go back and check it then and make sure that everything is smooth and copacetic. Now I want to chamfer all these corners down and make them just feel a little bit better to the touch. And I could do it with a block plane, but then the problem is I'm holding a small piece and moving a block plane by, and it's very hard to keep your fingers out of it that way. And in this case, I actually like to flip a plane upside down and clamp it into the bench. Now make sure don't clamp the wings, actually clamp the sole of the plane, otherwise you'll end up breaking wings off of your plane, and that's not a happy thing. And then once that's in place, then we can run the piece over the plane. Just make sure you don't hit your fingers, and it goes pretty easily. I'm going to finish this off with boiled linseed oil and paste wax, and so it's a couple coats of boiled linseed oil, let it soak in, and wait until the wood doesn't want any more. Each time wipe it off, and then I'll put on some paste wax, let the paste wax harden, and then polish off the paste wax. So it's a really easy finish that is pretty much foolproof, and it's not incredibly protective, but it looks good, and you get to feel the wood, and you get the naturalness of it. And here you can start to see all of the different colors that come out, from the dark poplar to the light poplar to the oak, and then into the aspen, which is bright white. It's fun to see how these come together and show up differently. And now for the final test. Make sure everything fits, make sure it all works, and try and do it from memory without looking at the picture. Good luck. This one was is actually a little more difficult than I expected. It took several tries to get it all to come together, but in the end I was able to fit it all together and get it down into place. And it's really fun when you get close to it and you see how it's all going to come together, and you get excited. You slide the last piece down and you rotate the last one into position, and there you go. It's a finished puzzle. And this is a lot of fun one. It holds together well, and it would make a great Christmas present, and it'd be fun to hand it to someone and say, yeah, here, I made this. Hope you like it. There you go. This is a fun one, and I'm really loving how this came out. Anytime I get a chance to make a puzzle, it's really exciting. And particularly this one with all 4 of the woods in it, I really like this. So if you like to see this and you want to see more of them, let me know down below, and I'll get onto that. Also, if you want to see the plans for this, I'll leave a link to the same site where I downloaded them, so you can get them too. And there you have a whole bunch of other designs on there and other prizes and puzzles that you can work through. So definitely take a look at that and have a little bit of fun. And this is a great skill builder, because even if you mess up a few things, oh well, you can make another piece, and it doesn't take that much time to fiddle one of these out. And I pumped this out in about 3 hours this afternoon, so it doesn't take that much at all. I hope you like it. If you did, please hit like, comment, share, subscribe, ring the bell. You know all those fun things, and they really help out the channel. So thank you for that. That means a lot to me personally. I think that's about it for now. And until next time, have a wonderful day. Okay, let's do it. You asked for it. Dad jokes. And I will try and leave a link to the book. I've had a lot of people asking me, where'd you get this book? I'll leave that one down below. So let's see what we got. Every morning, I plan on making pancakes, but I end up waffling.